Hello, welcome to the Boss It podcast with Mark Edwards and Michael Humblett. This podcast is released every week and is an over-the-shoulder look of a frank and candid discussion between two experienced software executives, providing you with useful tips, techniques, and the latest concepts to help you grow your software business in the fast-paced digital age. So let's get into it. Here is Mark Edwards and Michael Humblett.
Hello, Michael.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
Good. I've been thinking during the week. I've had a busy week, and I guess you have as well.
You've been thinking, Mark. That's
I have.
always
I've been
interesting.
yeah. And I was wondering. You were talking last week. You sounded a little bit frustrated with
Absolutely.
one of the salespeople.
Yeah.
And it was an interesting story, and I was wondering if there'd been any progress.
So let me recap the story very briefly for our listeners. So I was in a company. It's a scale-up, fast growing, high velocity speed. Things need to go really well. And it's very passive sales team. So I have one of the sales guys. I have a discussion with him. I say, you're a good guy. You've read all the material. You understand it all, but you're in essence not doing it. You're thinking about it, but you're not doing it. So I was nice. I was not nice. I tried everything. And after 2 weeks, and this was early this week, we decided it just doesn't fit. So we have to let you go because it's never going to work. Yeah. And because of doing that, suddenly other people in the team said, well, I don't think this is something for me. So I was thinking, okay, so I've basically lost half of my sales team, which is not good in this moment because I'm lifting off the plane and suddenly the engine falls off, right? You know, that's not good, especially for a jet engine. It's really bad. And on the other hand, it gives exactly the right momentum to hire the right people that do not know it's impossible, if you understand what I mean.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's an exciting time. So we're hiring, and one of the advices, especially for inside sales, one of the advices and that they always given me was hire two at the same moment because onboarding costs and you create natural tension and all of that. And we're actually doing that. And I have to say, each time I've done it, it actually turned out really well.
Yeah.
And so that's where we are there. So it's really exciting. I'm there every week. And I really see the momentum, and we're also pouring tons of leads in there because we set up the whole marketing funnel engine to inbound, and it's going to give a complete different dynamic. But you'll hear more about it in the coming weeks. I'll keep telling the story. So we have a storyline at the end. I'll tell you who it is, right?
Really?
You can place bets. Who is it, Michael? Yes. Who is it? Well,
who is it? Yeah. Well, I've got a similar story actually. I can't disclose who it is, but it's with one of my clients, and I mean it's always difficult trying to find good salespeople. It's an ongoing battle, and then once you've got those good people, it's hanging on to them. And this company, they recruited somebody that they'd known for a few years, so they'd been on the other side of the table to him, so they knew quite a lot about him. Brought him on board, and he started really well. Brought in some sales.
He brought in some sales.
Yeah, so it quite quickly. I mean, there wasn't a long delay because I think that's one issue when you're bringing in new salespeople is the sort of the ramp up time. But he seemed to be out there firing, and he was succeeding. The only slight concern that they had, which was on the second day. He asked if he could have the afternoon off because he was going to go to anger management classes. That probably creates a little bit of a concern. I mean, it's good that he's going and he's getting help. Yeah. Obviously, it's better that he's doing that rather than just having the anger management problems. But I think that would make you a little bit nervous.
Actually, you know what's funny? This morning, Mark, I was in a kitchen store because I'm building a house. I'm in the kitchen store, and I like to watch these salespeople because it's really hardcore B2C. Right, so, and he was saying my name and the name of my girlfriend the whole time, and you feel all the techniques and trying, and I felt from everything when I was looking at him, because as soon as I started saying something, and he put up his hand because he was busy doing important stuff, and he didn't pick up the phone because he was busy with, and I felt this is an anger management guy. This guy has real issues, and you feel the tension in this person, and I'm thinking, good God, so. You know me, and As I seen that, I start manipulating this the whole way through, and I got him to a point where it's like, okay, I'll give you that discount. Anyway, but it is I think it's, yeah, you see that maybe more in salespeople than in other people, I think.
Well,
This
this
frustration, this tension, no?
this story didn't end there because they sent him abroad quite some distance to an account, an existing customer, and he disappeared. And apparently he had gone out drinking with one of the client's employees.
Yeah.
They they'd been to some lap dancing clubs,
Good God. Yeah.
disappeared for 2 days, and lost the company laptop.
And then far, far away. Huh?
Yeah, so I mean, the problem's
But
there
Mark,
because that's
did
expensive.
he close the deal or not?
No,
Yeah.
he
Then we
didn't.
know.
He didn't come back to close the
No,
deal.
but
He
it's
just
really
disappeared.
it's bad business
Ah,
doing that.
yeah.
It's always
That's
comes back as a
frustrating, isn't
boomerang.
it? So what would you do under those circumstances? There-
Same, I would. We have to stop. I mean, ethically, it's just not possible. It's just no
yeah,
good practice, and you have to say sorry. But if you can't control it, I have to
yeah,
say. Can I ask what age range he was?
30.
Ah, that's young. So because I remember at a certain stage I needed to hire senior sales guys. So I was sourcing them from Microsoft, Oracle, all the big names, because
Yeah,
if you hire them from there, they must be good with all the training, which I learned is really not the case, by the way. Because you want them hungry, and in those structures there is so much structure, there is too much place to hide in most cases, and I also hired two guys, and they were in the age range 35, 40, and I think they must have been their midlife. They started with me, and after 3, 4 days they went berserk. They went drinking, they did crazy stuff, crazy expenses. I had to stop them after like 2 months and say, guys, this is insane. I expect professionalism, and you're acting like 18-year-old adolescents that see beer for the first time. So how do you figure
I
it out during the interview, Mark? So let me ask you a question. You do the interview with these guys. How do you figure that one out?
that's tough, isn't it?
That
Yeah,
stuff, huh? Because they're good in manipulating. That's
of
why you
course.
hire them in the
Yeah,
first place.
if they can't present themselves well, they've really got a
Yeah.
problem, and typically they can.
You
Um,
know what I do, Mark? I found a way. I annoy them during the interview. Really, if I annoy them a bit, not too often, but like I get it on their nerves, then you feel anger and frustration. You feel that very quickly.
I'm not,
So
yeah, I can see. I think they use that. They use that in military services,
maybe
don't they?
I
When
have to
they're
say
when
one of those two that I had to. He was actually a military guy, and the
okay,
feedback he gave to me afterward, because I asked him afterwards, I phoned him. I said, "But why did it went wrong?" And then several jobs behind it all went wrong. And he said to me, "Michael, I need clear guidelines. I need clear direction." I said, "I can't give. I'm not gonna phone you every day to say what you want, what you need to do." And that's why it went off the rails.
yeah, it's strange actually that you. It sounds like he's asking for you to be very prescriptive as to how he
Yes.
should do his
Yeah.
job,
Yeah.
whereas I think the really talented people, the smart people, they want to know what their objectives are, but really to a great extent within the bounds of the business, obviously, they want to be left alone because the
Yeah.
path there, they want to be able to have that flexibility.
Exactly.
So
And
that's quite
yeah,
unusual.
that's what I do with sales now. These days, I say,
Yes.
okay, so where do you want to go? Okay, what's the segment you want to do? Okay, you tell me the plan. Then, if they can't, I help them a bit and said, you want responsibility, you're gonna get it. And then I do random controls, so they never
Yeah.
know when I show up. I tell you, it's a dream come true. Some can't handle it because it's tough, huh? But if you do well, there is no problem. There is just no problem. Everybody's happy.
Yeah. It's
Talking
managed.
of everybody happy, Mark. Last week, or this week, I have to say, because it's Friday, I've been to 3 boards. And almost every single time, I had to think, guys, because it were by accident, man, guys, you're not telling the story right. Because you're exposing yourself to very, very nasty questions. I think it's an art to do proper board decks. I think it's an art to lead your board members to the same conclusion as you have made, but you let them make the conclusion. That's for me the ultimate, of course. How's your experience on that?
Explain that to me a little bit more. What is it?
So in many cases, for instance, I mean, the board's coming in every quarter, and actually
Yes.
you had a serious problem. Let's imagine. I mean,
Yes.
a lot of scale-ups, it's never right, and it
No,
explodes, and
sure.
it pivots from left to right, and it's always something burning really, really hard. And then, of course, boards figure that out because they spend money, and they say, hey, this is not right. So I told them, said the way to do. I'm gonna give the answer how to do it for. So let me tell you differently. So the way they do it is they either don't talk about their problems or completely at the end, or they start with like the financials and then of course you figure it out. Two, they show way too much detail when the discussion goes in every direction around a detail. So first slide comes up, you talk half an hour about first slide. Yeah, that's not what you want to do. Right? You want to tell your story. And three, boards make really bad conclusions and say this guy is incapable of leading it while he is the best guy to do it because the story is just a mess.
Yeah.
And
Y-
the trick I think is one of the things I learned from from McKinsey actually is that when you do a slide, you show the problem, you put the conclusion or the next step, how you're going to solve it next to it. And hopefully you put two, and then you say to the board, this is the problem. This is how I intend to solve it. There are two options. Can I ask you advice? What would you agree with, one or two? Or do you have
Right.
an? You see,
I
that's
see.
the way to treat a board. You
I
flip it.
understand.
You
Yes.
use them.
Yes. I understand what you're saying. So you're not hiding away from the
No,
issue, but you're not just leaving a completely open forum
no, no,
so that it
no,
can
no.
go in any direction. You're actually keeping it solution orientated, but
Yeah,
giving them options as
yeah.
to we could do this or we could do this way, A or B. What do you think? And you're
I
then
think
getting
the board.
input from them.
I think the board should work for you.
Yes.
That's also one of the things I tell them. At the end, you ask them what they need to do for you because they have all the connections, all the network, and because if you don't, they'll hit you anyway. Whatever you do, even if it's good, you'll get slapped, right? That's most boards. I mean, so just say, you have all the connections. Can you please do tack 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 tack? I said, let them work for you. Keep them busy. And actually, it's gonna benefit your company a lot.
Yes.
I'm talking about external
Yeah.
board members and those kind of types. I mean,
Yes.
internal, if you're the CEO and your co-founder is sitting there, it's a different story, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean that actually leads me on to a book recommendation that I've got.
Okay.
I'm going to make sure that we put this up on the notes afterwards. Simon Sinek, have you come across him?
Yes, it's one of the best movies, The Why, on
Yes.
YouTube. I
TED Talk.
love the
TED
story.
Talk.
The
Yeah,
TED Talk.
TED Talk.
Yeah.
That's how he became famous, and he's written a few
Yeah.
books then. But the book that I've been reading recently is Leaders Eat Last, and it links with the point that you're saying
Yeah. Yeah.
about the senior people there are there to help the employees, to help the staff to solve problems and to lead.
Yeah.
Um, I think that very much, carries on. So Simon Sinek, Leaders Eat Last, which is a good title as well. Why some teams pull together and others don't. And it's basically talking about the people, the employees within the organization. They need to feel safe within their environment, and they need to have leadership. They need to have a vision. But they also need to know that they've got freedom in which they can sometimes make mistakes, and the people above them are there to remove the obstacles. I mean, there's quite a few points within the book, and I haven't completely finished it yet, but it's a good read so
Yeah.
far. So
Yeah.
I'll
I'd like
definitely
to read and listen to him.
yes,
There is also a very interesting movie. I don't know where it is exactly, where he talks about. It's been a massive hit on Facebook, where he talks about youth and adolescence and how we're
yes,
treating it. It's really. I kept watching and listening and thought, damn, this is really spot on.
the Millennium
Yeah,
Generation, which
yeah,
has
that one.
that has implications for modern companies now,
Yeah,
because the millennials they've grown up in a different environment, and to come into the old sort of hierarchical, very a completely different way of managing people. I don't think that the older style, very dictatorial that you sometimes used to see, I don't think that works very well with the millennials.
Yeah, but then they all look up to Elon Musk and Steve Jobs and all these guys, and they are extreme dictators, right? So, but also very visionary. Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's working in the old school way. It just doesn't work. But
No.
I'm curious to see if I look at the leaders. It's mainly my generation, and let's say 40 plus at these days. What I come across. I haven't seen the real young guys. I should find some. I
What?
have some customers that are like 25, 26 with companies of 50, 60 people.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
haven't
starting to see that now.
I haven't seen that they are dictator. They can be tough, right? But it's
No. I think you'd agree. Those younger entrepreneurs, the business leaders, they don't tend to have that quite dictatorial approach, which probably fits and works for that generation.
Mhm. Yeah, I
It,
agree.
but I mean, you must remember you've perhaps been part of it, sort of sales teams in the past, where sales management really very. I mean, they probably had to keep control of the salespeople in those days, from the 90s drinking culture that there used to be, and
Yeah,
there's
yeah, and
obviously there's
also,
still
but
hangover from it
don't
now.
forget there are many tools now to check. Huh? So you have CRM on the
Yes.
mobile, and it's a bit of different. And the whole drinking thing. I remember my first, and this actually happened. My first day in the job, my boss, she took me to a restaurant, lunch, and she ordered. We were two. It was a lady. She ordered 2 bottles of red wine. And she said, "This is one for you, one is for me." And said, "When you're halfway through, I'm gonna teach you how to negotiate." And really, she kept that up for like 3, 4 days in a row. So I mean, I was training as a professional drinker at a certain stage, and in those days it was very common, especially Belgium, France. Now it's rare, very, very rare that there is even some alcohol on the lunch table.
Yeah, and I think, well, I think, UK has had a drinking culture for a long time. I think that's the
Yeah.
reputation within Europe. I think it's still there, but it's not as bad as it used to be.
No, it's true. It's still there, but it's
Yes.
mainly the 5, 6 o'clock pub kind of approach, not
Yes.
the lunch thing, but the pro there.
Yes.
Yeah, I
If
found
you
it always funny in London, but then again, it was really tough as a foreigner to, man. I mean, I came back and my family didn't like me to go to London because they knew I would be 2 days pissed in a bar, actually, which was
Yeah.
fun, but one day reality hits you, right?
Yes, that's right. I mean, so even now, if you walk through London, centre of London, on a Thursday and Friday evening, I
Yeah,
mean, the pubs are absolutely packed with business people. And I
yeah.
think it's probably their release, but it's not a healthy one.
No, true, true.
One of the things I was talking to a
Yeah,
client this week, we were talking about cognitive dissonance.
that's
Um,
interesting.
yeah,
Tell me what is it for?
cognitive dissonance. I think it comes down to where I'm seeing it is with organisations, and you're looking at them, and you're getting mixed messages. And a lot of this comes down to the fact that they haven't really sat down and thought about who they are as an organisation. They tend to be very much creating lots of content and talking about functions and features, and we believe in the customer and customer quality and all of those things that we've heard before. And it tends to be a bit of a mess. But within that, as you try to get to understand a bit about the business, you think, what is this business about? On the one half, they seem to be an organisation that is talking about caring for their employees, and then over here we've got another message, and it's very difficult to really get to grips with what type of business it is. You don't get a feel for it. Go onto a lot of websites, a lot of software technology business websites, and it's difficult sometimes just to even understand what they do. It's just all over the place. And sometimes it's because it's a business that's been in existence for some time, and they're building products, and they're building services, and they're only on with layers, and the website reflects that, and all of their messaging really goes. But I think at some stage they need to stop and think about who they are. Where we see that a lot are those organizations when we're working with them on a sales process, and it's very difficult to position them.
Yeah,
This is this.
that's where you have the true impact of dissonance. It's when you
Yeah,
do the sales story and you're kind of doing this and that and that and after a while people are like, so after an hour, now I understand what you do, which is really bad.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
right. Yeah, and
yeah, true.
it is very difficult, and to create a structure or some sort of
So how
organized
would
way.
you how would you advise when you see that? I mean, we see a lot of companies like that. What would you advise them to do? Where should it start?
Well, it needs to go back to the business, the sort of the top level message of why do they exist as an organization. Um, that can be difficult to find sometimes. If it's an organization that's been around some time and there may be, perhaps the founders have left, but if the founders are there, a good question to ask is, why did you start the business? And hopefully it isn't just to make a profit. Um, there'll be a deeper message within that. But it's to see what is at the very DNA core of this organization. Why do they exist? What problem do they address?
So I have, by the way, two really good examples, and sometimes it is something very simple, and I think companies try to explain it too complex. So if let's
Yes,
take one,
yes,
maybe you know them, HubSpot. It's a
yep,
marketing automation. They're scaling enormously at the moment. A classic
yep,
SaaS, no longer scale up. It's like a big beast becoming a big beast. And if you look at their website, they have like one sentence on there, and it says all systems grow. It's
yeah,
so simple, but it's in essence what they do. If I then jump, for instance, to another, staying a bit in the sales marketing space, company in Belgium, large scale up, also offices in America, all over the place, called Showpad. What Showpad does is let me read the sentence. It says, the best buyer experience wins.
yeah,
Showpad empowers sales and marketing to sell the way buyers want to buy. It's
yeah.
so simple and so straightforward. I mean, there is no escape to this message. Now, I know both of these companies, they have spent fortunes to content writers to get this right. So the simpler it
It's,
is, the more
yeah,
money it costs. It's always the same.
absolutely,
Yeah, it's like
absolutely, yes,
design. It looks
yeah,
so
yeah.
simple. Yeah, it's going to cost you a fortune, mate.
It's really, really hard. It's all about pricing. Actually, that made me think of Zendesk,
Yeah,
well-known company.
yeah, yeah,
Connect with customers on any channel. And
voilà.
that's at the very top level. So that's their tagline. And what they're trying to do with that tagline in essence is they're telling a story in one line. And then from that comes the company narrative. And
Yeah,
that's
I-
explaining why they exist. But it's not pushing functions and features and bells and whistles. It's telling that narrative. And then once you've got the narrative, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before, I used to get confused between a corporate narrative and the stories that a company tells. Do you
yeah,
get that? You hear
yeah, yeah,
people,
yeah, no,
and
absolutely, absolutely.
where is it? Where is it a story? Well, why is that a narrative? Why is that a
Yeah,
story? And I think the narrative is the thread that holds the stories together.
true.
So the narrative here with Zendesk is being able to communicate, connecting with customers on any channel. So that's the thread. The stories where they perhaps giving examples and they're talking about perhaps it's existing clients, perhaps they're showing particular opportunities. If you think of the narrative as the necklace, then those stories are the pearls that sit within on that necklace, but it's
Yeah,
threaded together and it
yeah,
holds together. Where you get this cognitive dissonance is where it's not done, and they're just throwing information at you, and you've got different marketing people, you've got PR people, and it's just lots of information, and you get to the other cognitive, which is the cognitive overload, and you can't hold that information in your head. Those
no, no,
companies,
no.
and you're
True.
exactly right. Those companies that have spent an awful lot of money, and you wouldn't believe sometimes how much money it costs to get that. They've praised it, they've simplified, they've boiled it down, and then they've structured the information. So you've got the tagline, you've got the narrative. Beneath the narrative sit the stories, and then you may have some sort of key concepts, and then beneath that you also on occasion have people talking about technology, but not leading with it. And that's something that I'm seeing so much at the moment is companies that are using technologies and they're leading with it. Everything now at the moment is AI, big data, robotic process automation, data analytics, and they're using it like it used to be used in the old days, the buzzwords of the industry, because there are some techies out there that are wanting to find out about these technologies. And yes, these technologies do have value, but you don't lead with it. That isn't who you are as an organization. There's a big danger there, because I think if it's like you go back, I don't know, what's 20 years, perhaps even more than that. Business intelligence. That was another one of these concepts that was out there, and it was in the media. Everybody was talking about business intelligence, and then all of a sudden it had its day. And these technologies, they become like flared trousers or tank tops. Who wants to be associated, with something that's long gone out of date? And that's the problem that I think a lot of these companies have, is that they strongly attach themselves to something that will quickly go out of date, but actually
Yeah,
doesn't.
no,
It
absolutely.
doesn't
Yeah.
really. It doesn't really talk to people. It's just information, facts, functions, and features, and when it goes out of date, your business is going to go out of date. But if you're doing it, I mean, Apple is probably the best at the marketing, and they're one of the biggest organisations, if not the biggest organisation in the tech sector, and 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 they've overtaken many much bigger competitors. But they did it by saying, we're going to innovate to enable you to be creative. And when they've released products, you've had other companies come along to copy them, but they're just trying to sell you kit.
Yeah.
Whereas
Yeah.
Apple are there to help you be more creative, to have products of innovation. And that
Yeah.
works, doesn't it?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I think the messaging is important to have a structure with that. And one of the other things that I was talking about this week, because bringing all of that together is very difficult to do. I understand that most companies get it wrong,
Yeah,
and
it's
I think
also a lot of flying pieces around, and if I
it
hear
is.
the comment, if I have to fix that, I need to fix that. And for instance, one of the things I've been talking a lot about was last week and a half was pricing and product, and I said a lot of times I have to say, why don't you give the beast a name, or why don't you give it another brand name, so it becomes easier to talk about it, like package services and that kind of stuff. And it comes down to the same story. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it can become very, very confusing, and they don't. It's very difficult to see things from your audience perspective. That's
Yeah,
the real
I know.
difficulty. And when you're so
So the things
close,
that I was with a company, I can't tell you which one, of course, somewhere in Brussels, and they were having a really hard time to do exactly this. And I told them, I said, why don't you phone your customers, some of the customers you know really well, and just ask them, how would you explain what my company does? And they'll tell you something completely different than you have in your mind. And that's
yes,
actually the perception. And sometimes it's so simple, or sometimes it's something so different. You go like, actually, not bad. That's exactly what I do.
yes, yes. I think the only thing that you've got to be aware of there sometimes is I've seen organisations that are spending a lot of time speaking to their existing customers, which is good because they need to get that feedback. But they forget that those conversations are completely different than a new prospect coming to understand this business and understand
Hmm.
what they offer. And they're talking at a very detailed level.
Ah, like that.
I
Yeah.
call that beneath the funnel, because there's sort of three stages. You've got the conversation right at the top of the funnel, which is talking about who we are as an organization, why we exist. And then the middle of the funnel is going into a bit more detail as to what problem we're addressing, how our solution addresses that problem. And then probably more towards the bottom of the funnel, you've got a different type of conversation where you've got somebody who's saying, okay, I've got this problem. It's interesting that you've got the solution. How would we take this forward? So you're perhaps talking to them about the steps needed if they were to take your solution in moving forward, or talking about return on investment, those sort of things. But then once they're a customer, they're beneath the funnel. That's a different type of conversation as well. And if you're used to having that conversation, you're speaking at that level all the time, and then you do it with new people coming to you, that will cause an awful lot of confusion. I said before, it's like going in to see a play and you walk in on Act 3.
You have no clue what happened.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I've just noticed we've just gone past 30 minutes. We went a fair bit past last week.
Yeah.
So it might be, unless you've got another gem, or if you've got another story of a salesman who isn't performing, maybe.
I'm thinking about really, really bad stories of bad sales guys that really, really did dirty stuff, which we can't say out loud.
Go on. Yes, you
maybe
can.
Nick. I have one story, one small story.
Yeah.
When the early days when I was hired as an account manager a long time ago, they also hired a girl, and we were there 3 days, and it was a fairly large company, and we had a company due, and the day after she was let go, and I'm like, what happened? What she basically kissed 4 or 5 different people within the company on the same evening and slept with 2. And I'm like, how do you do that? She must be good in sales, right?
Perhaps she was just there thinking she was proving her sales technique. I don't know. That's not a long record with a company. How do you explain that one? Well, I had to go after a couple of days. What did you do? Well,
like them, I really didn't. I couldn't fit it within the company. All the stories.
I don't know. I think we better end it there. I can think of all sorts of puns on that story. Yeah, exactly. All right, it's great speaking to you, Michael. And
Thanks, Mark.
Hopefully we'll get some more feedback, and we'll speak again next week.
Speak to you next week.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.